Good morning, everybody. Thank you for watching Taxes Made Easy here at with Hubert Johnson here with Guardian Tax Law. Today's topic, we're going to continue yesterday. We're going to walk through the IRS analysis. I did this before, but I didn't use charts. I didn't walk you through it. So you get to see a bad impression of Bob Ross with my drawing, and we're going to have some fun. There's a lot of news to cover, so stick with us. Welcome back, everybody. Again, thank you for watching live or on rebroadcast here at Taxes Made Easy. I started a little late because I thought I had everything together, and I saw a link, and that made me go, hold the phone. And we're going to talk a lot about that. Our main topic today, like I said, is really doing a deep dive into the offer and compromise analysis. We're going to use some charts. We're going to explain why so many offers get rejected and how to prepare and look at the long haul for your offer. So yesterday when I plugged in my numbers into the IRS pre-qualifier, I purposely left a flaw that affects a lot of people, and the IRS pre-qualifier absolutely missed it. It's probably one of the biggest differences between most programs that people use, even especially tax preparers, and how the IRS actually looks at an offer and compromise. So we're going to jump first into the news. First article is from irs.gov, another disaster relief, this time for Rhode Island. They had some pretty severe storms and flooding that affected Kent, Providence, and Washington counties. So if you're in those counties, you have until July 15th to file your tax returns and make tax payments. So it just gives you another 3 months. To get your tax returns in and pay your taxes. So again, if you are in the affected counties, it doesn't have to make national news for you to get some tax relief based on that. The next article, I'm going to try to move through these quickly, is about fake charities. This is a big one. This is a big scam that I see regularly. People take whatever's in the news and they throw something out there and start trying to raise money. And a lot of people that are sympathetic to these causes just give this, they pour money into this because it pulls at people's heartstrings. Now, one of the biggest ones that I've seen lately is raising money for Gaza. Raising money for all the people affected by the Israeli-Gazan war. Now, politically, it doesn't matter which side you are on it. A lot of these charities are just scams. They're taking your money and run. The money doesn't go anywhere. And it's very, very typical that a lot of people that have no connection, no involvement, whatever in this, is just taking the money and running. Another problem with this particular scam is that the money doesn't go to the people. There's been articles, there's been news stories that Hamas is actually taking the aid, one, for themselves, two, they're selling it on the black market and taking the money and funding the war. So one of the problems here, and again, our media has been so one-sided and on this issue. Everybody tells Israel, ceasefire, ceasefire, ceasefire. This whole time, Hamas is still hitting Israel with rockets. Every single ceasefire has been violated by Hamas because they're still somehow funding and getting money for rockets. And most of the UN aid and a lot of the aid that's being delivered, they're seizing, they're selling, they're using it to fund their war that they started. And again, that's the untold story here, is that Hamas hasn't stopped. Hamas has continued to attack Israel through this entire process. Yes, all they have left is Ramadi, but they started this war and they haven't stopped fighting. They haven't taken any ceasefire seriously, and they still have over 100 hostages. So I'm getting a little carried away with this, but again, be very, very careful of any effort to fundraise for Gaza because it's rife with fraud. And anytime, the money for Haiti was another very clear example. There was all kinds of fraud. And there's a lot of huge allegations that a lot of the government assistance went to waste. So there's a lot of mismanagement and a lot of fraud. If you want to donate and help people directly, there are reputable charities out there. Now, these aren't the charities out there and blasting ads and trying to raise money. These are your typical Red Cross, Red Crescent, depending where you are in the world. There are plenty of charities that donate regularly across the world, millions of dollars. There are churches that regularly do this. Just throw a little plug out there for my church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. People complain that it has so many assets, but the assets are mainly used for humanitarian assistance across the world. So there are plenty of churches that do excellent work. There's plenty of organizations that do excellent work. Check them out. Another great church is the Salvation Army. When you look at how charities are ranked, so be careful with charities you donate to. Be careful of scams when it comes to charitable money. It's one of the oldest scams out there. But again, very, very profitable for scammers and people just looking to rip you off. So just be mindful of that. And if you're donating to charities, watch out for that. So the IRS actually has a list of charities, and here's some of their advice. Don't give into pressure. Someone's doing a pressure sell on you to make a donation, you need to walk away. If you're making donation payments, if they're asking you to send gift cards or wire transfers or anything like that, walk away. And if you're making funny payments like that, you're probably not going to be able to write it off as a deduction. Verify the legitimacy of the charity. I was just talking about that. You can go to any site and have charities ranked. One of the worst charities out there is one of the most popular, Goodwill. Most of the profit goes to their owner that makes millions of dollars. There's all kinds of volunteer hours. People are donating. They think it's for a good cause. It is by far not one of the best charities. I promote Salvation Army is one of the better charities out there. And I'll do that all day long for Salvation Army. And then don't share too much information. If they're asking for money and personal data, don't disclose social security numbers, credit card numbers, personal identification numbers. Anytime they're trying to get your personal information, it's a red flag. And there are ways to make payments without disclosing your banking information. So if you have someone that you know, you trust, that's been around for a long time, that's usually a legitimate site. So moving along, I want to talk about the real estate market again. So this is brand new, came out yesterday. Almost all the sources I talk about just came out, and this one has a little ad that I muted earlier, but decided to start talking again. Mortgage applications have gone down again, and it's no surprise. Mortgage rates are still pushing up due to the uncertainty in the market. The Fed rate hasn't changed, but again, overall inflation has gone up. So it's making it more and more expensive to purchase a home. So this article, I'm gonna relink it to our when we post everything on YouTube, we'll have all the links there. And this is just not great news when it comes to the real estate market. I talked to someone who's making six figures regularly. He has had one sale so far in 2024, and we're already out of the first quarter. And it has some links to other articles. One of them I had mentioned before, that in most states, most of the country requires average income to purchase a home is six figures. And then there was a link to an article. This is what distracted me. And I actually want to share this article. And take this with a grain of salt. But again, this article is talking. I want to mute it. Don't you love news sources where they just pop up? So let me go ahead and share this article, and we can kind of walk through it. Now, this is very counterintuitive, and part of this, is for clicks, but this is from Fox Business. It says renting is a better bet in markets across the U.S. Now, you go to the comments, and it cries foul, but the average median rent is only $50 less than its peak in August 2022, which means rents have gone down slightly. But again, when you compare the cost of a starter home to monthly rent across the 50 largest metro areas, there's a difference of about 1,027. So this makes more sense when you're looking at cities that have higher housing costs overall. Housing prices are starting to creep down from their high, but again, it hasn't made enough adjustment. But again, this goes through a lot of different numbers, and again, prices are still high, and it's only $50 less than their peak, but the cost of housing has shot up so much. So the question is, to rent or buy, what to consider when buying a house or an apartment. And honestly, I'm all for purchasing homes. It builds value. You get tax write-offs. It helps you in so many ways. But what's going on in the market today is so crazy that it becomes very difficult to afford homes and to afford an average home. So a lot of people are looking at my own sister. Her husband's in the Air Force, and they've been renting because they move every few years, and they've been overseas, so it's really hard to purchase a property overseas. And they tried doing a rental and got burned on it, but now they're looking. He's going to be retired and trying to find a job, and they're going to be looking to purchase a home, and they're not sure how they're going to go about it. So here's my thoughts. The biggest savings are in the most expensive markets. So Austin, Texas is known right now. Their housing prices have gone through the roof, driven by very high property taxes. Seattle, Tacoma, Phoenix, Chandler in Phoenix, the prices have skyrocketed for homes. San Francisco, you can probably save money renting rather than purchasing property. The reason for it is still the purchase property. The prices are astronomical, but everybody's leaving, so there's a huge lack of renters. So that's why rental prices have gone down. But this is a temporary thing. Eventually, the market will stabilize, knock on wood. It should stabilize if we can get some stability in our market. Los Angeles, it might, just the costs are too insane to purchase, so it might make sense to rent. San Jose, which is still part of the Bay Area with San Francisco. Nashville, Tennessee, I guess, is really going up. I wasn't aware of that one. Portland, Vancouver, Sacramento area. Again, prices are through the roof there. Houston. But here's one point. So the average increase, this all argues in these metro areas it might make a lot more sense to rent rather than buying. But I think the worst areas are probably skewing the curve, making that in other places across the country, it probably makes a lot more sense. So interesting enough, I was going through some of the comments, and again, one of the big things is purchasing homes still is a great way to go in most areas, but you have to look at the local markets. And again, there's a lot of opinions either way. Some people even say, look, rent and invest the difference, and you'll save a lot more money in the end. When I purchased my home a few years ago, it was as expensive to purchase a home. I got the write-off from it for the mortgage deduction, and we are over time. So I'm going to go ahead and I get too excited. We'll be right back. Welcome back, everybody. So again, we were talking about a lot of things, renting versus buying. There's just so much news. There are a few articles that I even skipped over. This last one is almost like an infomercial, but it's kind of funny. It's got some good news and good information. And I'm going to actually skip the last article. We're just going to have to talk about it next week. But this looks like an infomercial for a lot of companies out there. Some of them do not have the best reputation. Just a little caveat there. But this is from CBS News. 3 best times to consider tax relief. When do you need to go get tax relief? So it talks about, first of all, tax season is full swing. Usually you'll receive a refund. Most people will. But when do you actually need to reach out and look for tax relief? So again, they have a lot of ads from the bigger companies out there. And then I thought this was helpful information, which is why I wanted to share it. When you're experiencing a financial hardship, believe it or not, there are rights. You have a right to pay your mortgage, to survive, to live in your home. The IRS is not supposed to be putting people on the streets, believe it or not. And so you have rights to pay what you can afford to pay. Now, the IRS has certain rules that are very much out of whack, and I've talked a lot about that. So if you've lost your job, you were injured, if you had health issues, diagnosed with a condition, or if your income has just gone down, or your expenses have gone up. You don't need to have some kind of crazy thing happening, but if you're just struggling to make ends meet, you don't have to sit there and struggle to pay your taxes on top of everything else. If you qualify for certain, either a hardship status where you don't have to pay anything or an offer in compromise. The idea here is that it's a general principle that the IRS should not be grinding the poor into the dust, which is actually a big biblical term where they rip people that the ruling class, but just hurting people right and left. So if you're making sacrifices to pay your debt payments, you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. I talked yesterday about someone that racked up $40,000 in credit card debt, maxed out all her credit cards to pay her taxes off. Absolutely unnecessary, and financially speaking for her, a very bad move. The IRS and the state were more than happy to take her money, even though it hurt her financially. She had better options available, and again, it was we helped her with what was left over, but we couldn't undo that damage. So, neglecting home, auto repairs, skipping multiple payments on loans or credit cards. That one's a little iffy because they don't give you credit for loans or credit cards. But as long as it's a secured loan, they will absolutely cover that. So again, when you're in engagement of collections, you need to set up something. If you're getting letters, especially if you get a certified letter, call, get some help, review this. And so again, they don't need to go through the court system. All they have to do is send you 3 notices of intent to levy. The third one will come certified. Once that comes, then the hammer's not far behind. So the best time to call and get relief is when you know you're going to ask, or when you know you're going to owe. When you think there's a problem, get ahead of it. It's always easier to get ahead of the game rather than deal with bank levies and wage garnishments, and then it's really hard to afford help when you're already being garnished. Again, we have flexibility, and we help people all the time. Now, this is an interesting thing. The $10,000 a month. This is out there. Most companies put it out there. We do that. The only reason they say $10,000 a month is because it doesn't make sense with the normal fees that are charged to help people if they owe less than $10,000. We do give free advice, and there's times we might do a quick pro bono case for someone that owes less than $10,000, but doesn't mean you shouldn't get help. Every case is important to the person doing it. If you're living on Social Security and you owe $5,000, that's a huge problem for you. there are free tax clinics across the country. Many of them are at your local law school. So if you reach out to your local law school, they will have free legal clinics, very frequently, and find one that has a free tax clinic. And there are charities that offer free tax clinics as well. These were hit hard post-COVID, so a lot of them that were in place, unfortunately, aren't in place, but you can get help across the country. You do not have to be local to a tax clinic for them to help you. So again, the IRS is setting more notices than ever. They just threw all this off. Reach out, talk to someone, get multiple opinions, and if you talk to someone that is charging an arm and a leg, you might want to get a second opinion. Okay, I'm not even going to touch the last article. We're going to dive directly into our topic for the day, and I'm going to share my screen. So we're going to jump to the whiteboard again, and I'm going to throw in some text here. So first of all, what do you need to be aware of? The main issues, last time we talked about the process, what does it take, how much follow-up is required to go through the offer and compromise process. And I'm not trying to scare people. It's just the reality of the IRS today. And they made it so much harder in the last few years, and it's completely unnecessary. So it's harder for everybody, tax preparers, tax professionals. You have to be on top of these changes and how to stay on top of it and make sure offers aren't rejected, and that you're taken care of. But again, just like anything, stability is a huge part of the problem. If you don't know the most recent changes with the IRS, it's easy to get burned. So there are two major things, and I mentioned these: anticipated assets. Well, actually, three things that we're going to talk about: retired debt and future income. We're going to break these down and talk about how these affect an offer and compromise. So let me we're on this page. I've got this handy dandy chart. I am not an artist. Bob Ross, eat your heart out. Okay, this is going to be a pretty easy chart. And we're going to just label this real quick. So in one part, we have money. And this down here, this other part of the chart, is time. So this kind of explains and helps explain how does this work. So if you have, there's two major parts to any offer and compromise: assets and future income. So first of all, we're going to talk about assets. If you have $10,000 in the bank, and we're just going to mark this off here. This is 0 down here. This is 10. Sorry, I am not an artiste. 10,000. Guess what your offer is going to be? 10,000. I spoke to someone the other day. They were broke, they were retired, they're on a fixed income, and they asked, can we do an offer and compromise? I said, well, you have two vehicles that are paid for. So your minimum offer would be $13,000. And that's what you would have to pay. And they only owe about $30,000. So I'm like, first of all, you don't have the money. Second of all, that's not a good offer. And you have the equity in your vehicles, and they're paid for. I don't think you can afford to go out and get payments. So it doesn't make sense for them to do an offer and compromise. So what do? We're going to do a non-collectible status, wait out the debts because they're retired on a fixed income, and we're going to stay on top of it, not just for the initial 2 years, but after that, we're going to stay with them until the debt is gone and they are officially free and clear of all tax issues. So let's say if we start at 10,000. In this case, if someone owes, I'm going to add another little thing. So each case, you need to know how much is owed. In this case, we're going to start off with 30,000. So someone owes 30,000, they're already starting off on 10,000. That's not a great offer. But let's say we adjust this and we go all the way down here, and let's say someone only has one. That's okay. 1,000 in their bank accounts. And let's say they have for future income. And what is future income? It's a fancy way of saying monthly income more than expenses. So let's bring that back. So if you have, in this case, we're going to say someone has 3,000 in income, but their allowable expenses is 2,800. How much is their future income? $200. So that's how much money the IRS is going to say they can pay per month. So I'm going to go back to drawing. Yay. So we have some interesting things. So if we go all the way right here, we're going to stretch this out to 10 years. And then we're going to come halfway here to 5. And we'll come down here to 2. And then 1. So what happens here is you look at the length of time and see what happens to your offer over time. So this is why it always helps to have this future income at 0, but it doesn't mean you can't do an offer. So if someone owes $30,000 and they're positive $200 a month, there are 2 different kinds of offers. And again, my wonderful sketch. So if you go over here at 1 year, which is for a lump sum offer, or 2 years, which is for a deferred payment, which I think avoid those. So lump sum for 12 months, the IRS is going to say they can pay $200 times 12. So their offer amount would be $2,400. And then for a deferred payment, which is 24 months, it would be $4,800. Still decent offers. The deferred payment gives you 24 months to pay it, but you have to start as soon as you submit your offer, and it stretches out. Now, does that mean they would accept the offer? So you have to have one thing very clear. And I've talked about this before, but I'm going to really hammer this out in. So your offer amount is not the same. It's not equal to RCP, reasonable collection potential. This is where it gets fun, and this is where it trips up most people. This is where it trips up most IRS analysis. So how long does the IRS have to collect on this debt? Roughly 10 years. If the debt is older, this time period is shortened. So let's break up my handy drawing, my expert lawn drawing skills. So over time, how much could this taxpayer pay to the IRS if they stretch it up to 10 years? $24,000. Now I made a little mistake here. I started this at 0. You have to start at where the cash is and just take that all the way up. So you have to add, the lump sum would add, the future income would add 2,400. And I'm getting a little complicated here. So the offer equals assets value plus future income times months. So here the asset value we have at $1,000. So the offer amount here, you still have to add $1,000 to the 2,400. So this lump sum amount would actually be $3,400. This would actually be $5,800. So when you stretch this all the way out, this is the offer amount, but what is the RCP? The RCP is stretching it out to when the tax debt is going to expire, 10 years, and trust me, it goes all the way out to this far. So if you go here, RCP, for this case would be $24,000 plus $1,000 in assets. So the way this works is RCP is not your offer amount. RCP is just the IRS way of looking at this and saying, hey, if we just let this ride and we don't give them an offer, can we collect either the full amount or most of it? So the rule of thumb is 80%. Again, it's a rule of thumb. If it's between 70 and 80% of the total value, it's very possible the IRS will reject the offer. So if you take 25,000 divided by 30,000, this is 83%. So if they leave this alone and stretch it all the way out to the RCP, they can collect 83% of the total amount owed. Would the IRS accept this offer? Simple answer, probably not. So even though someone's only positive $200 a month, they don't care. So I'm going to erase some of this and we're going to change the numbers a little bit. We're just going to change, sorry, that's a big, we're going to change this from positive $200 to positive $100 and see what happens. So if we change it to 100, got a big eraser here. And then we're going to use, so for 12 months, that changes it to $1,200. 24 months, $2,400. So the RCP would be $13,000. And what is the offer amount? The offer amount is this plus the 1,000. So 2,200 or $3,400. This is less than half of the total amount owed of 30,000. So the IRS would likely accept this offer. They would have a very hard time refusing this offer and compromise. And we're hitting another break, so we will be back shortly. Welcome back, everybody. So, if this has your head spinning a little bit, it's because this is the most difficult part of the offer. Understanding the offer, how it works. So, again, I want to walk through this. So, these are the issues for an offer: dissipated assets, retired debt, future income. This is what I want to cover, and how it affects an offer on compromise. So, we're going to have to continue this on Monday. There's just too much to cover here. But I was playing around here with some of the numbers. Let's go ahead and get rid of that for now. We're going to keep that at 30,000. I just want to mention something else. Everything else is the same. So here they have 2,900 and expenses. Future income is $100. So right here, over 12 months, 1 year, the lump sum amount is 1,200. So 100 times 12 months. And that gives you right here, an offer of $1,200 plus the 1,000. So that's 2,200. For the deferred thing, it's just it'd be 2,400 plus that. So it'd be 24 months times 100 plus the 1,000, which is 3,400. That would be your offer amounts under these two programs. Now, the RCP, reasonable collection potential, you have to figure that out. It's only 13,000 with a debt of 30,000, not a problem. But here's one of the issues, and this is one of the biggest changes. The IRS has gotten very aggressive about dissipated assets. So we're going to just start touching on the this is future income. You have to be very careful when it comes to future income. And we're just going to touch on dissipated assets. Let's see how far we get today. So let's say Uncle Bob decided to go off and pay off his credit card debt beforehand. Or he got some money, he had a large chunk, and he paid off a personal debt. Or, he went on vacation, whatever. He took money and he blew it. And then he realized, I still need to deal with the IRS, and he finally got around to it. So the IRS says, okay, you have $1,000. It's like he blew or spent on credit card debt another $9,000. So they're going to say his assets is $10,000. So dissipated asset. So when you have money that you could have paid to the IRS, and you paid it to something else that's not considered reasonable and necessary. So some of those things that are reasonable and necessary, if you do reasonable improvements to your home, we talked about that the other day. If you do pay down medical debt, if you go get dental work, if you go get a medical procedure that you've needed to get done, great, not a problem. And part of it is if you get a chunk of money and you use that, and then you use your normal income to pay off debt, it's just you're using whatever chunk of money that they might look at to pay down your necessary expenses, you're fine. But if you take $10,000 and pay down credit card debt, or $9,000 in this example, that's money that the IRS is going to say, hey, you should have paid us instead of your credit cards, instead of the personal loan, instead of taking this vacation or whatever. And I've got a case right now where someone is a gambler, and again, she's struggling, and so they came back and said one of the reasons that we're having a tough time with the case is she continues to gamble. So I went back to her and said, look, they pulled your numbers for last year, and they show that you're still gambling, $50,000, $60,000. And I said, what gives? And they don't want to give you a deal if they show that you continue to gamble. And she goes, well, hold the phone. I'm such an addict, I have a problem, but I'm not gambling with my own money. I have such a history with these casinos that they offer me free money to go gamble. And that's what I gamble with. I don't use my own money. I've stopped putting any of my own money in, but I use when they give me free credits, because they know that once you get in there, and it's just someone pulling a slot or gambling, it doesn't really cost the casino anything or very much. But it's a way to keep people engaged and encourage people that do a lot of gambling. She said, I've just been gambling with the casino's money, not my money. So that's not a dissipated asset where she's not putting her money into it. But in the past, she has put tens of thousands of dollars into gambling, which were all lost. So here, with the dissipated asset, it increases your assets. If you give away a car, I have people ask me all the time, can I just put a house in my name or my son's name, or a car in my son's name? I'm like, no. You have to have some kind of fair market transaction. Now, if you drop a contract and son pays you so much a month, that's fine. But you need to have some above board transaction that looks like a fair market transaction. And it needs to be for fair market value of the vehicle. So you can't just sell a nice car for $200 to your son and say, oh, I sold it. No, the IRS is smarter than that. So what that does is it drives up, and you start up here and doing your first offer calculation and then RCP calculation. So asset value, we're starting off at 10,000 here. And then, so it's 10,000 plus the lump sum here, we're not changing that, $1,200. So for the offer amount, you're looking at $11,200. If you have the cash with the ability to pay on a $30,000 debt, still not bad, not the greatest offer. And down here, for if you're only positive $100, that's $3,400. So that's $1,300, $400. My math teachers always used to get on me because I would skip steps, and I'm sorry. So I won't. So that's 10. Actually, I made a mistake there. It's not 3,400 because the 3,400 already includes the 2,000. So it's 10 plus 2,400 because it's $100 times 24 months for 2 years. And that's $10,000 to $12,400. Now, neither one of those are close to the 30,000, but when you stretch it out for the RCP calculation, I'm going to erase that. So for the lump sum, now you stretch it out to 10 years, it's 10,000 plus 12,000. How much could they pay over the life of the loan? $22,000. Or for the lump sum payment, it's 10,000 plus 24,000. Actually, that's not right. It's the same amount because you're stretching it out. So it's actually 22,000 either way. So RCP is the same there. So would the IRS accept this offer? Probably. You're outside it's about 70% of the total amount owed. So here's a little trick. And ironically, most people don't understand this. And I would never tell someone to go owe more tax debt so you qualify for a better program. I'll tell them don't pay off certain tax debt, or it's not advisable, because technically we can't advise anybody not to pay you taxes. But we can definitely explain the consequences. So if you have a much larger debt, the IRS has a much harder time getting the RCP up to this much larger debt. So that ironically, the more you owe, the more likely you are to qualify for an offer in compromise. Mind blown, right? So it gets a little interesting. It gets a little fun to go through. So even if you're looking at this, so the way I like to explain it, you figure out your offer amount, you figure out the RCP, and I treat it like a rubber band. Here's your offer amount. The IRS will stretch it out to 10 years to see, hey, can they pay the balance in full? If they can't over 10 years or when the tax debt is expiring, then it goes all the way back to your offer amount. This does not change offer. I've had this happen, and this is a mistake I've seen the IRS make on more than one occasion, where they came back and someone qualified for an offer, and she said, well, we need to do an amended offer, and she put the RCP amount, not the offer amount. And I think this was actually in appeals. And I said, well, hold the phone here. And I was nice about it. I said, I think we have an issue here. The offer amount should be this. The RCP amount is this, but the RCP amount is not the offer amount. That's just the reasonable collection potential that the IRS uses to see if they should accept an offer or not. And if the RCP isn't close enough to the total owed, it has to go all the way back down to the offer. So I explained that to her, and she goes, let me run it by my manager. Manager explained it to her. She's like, you're absolutely right, and went with the original offer amount. So the offer specialist messed up the numbers. We went to the appeals. She had the numbers right, but she messed up the RCP and got those confused. We got that straightened out and got a good offer for our clients. So we are running out of time, and this is really, so I can just talk about this for so much because there's so much here. So what I do want to talk about now is what happens if it's only 5 years left. So you have older debt, there's only 5 years left before it expires. So the closer debt is to expiring, the lower the RCP goes. So in this case, they're positive $100 a month. It's not 11,000 or the RCP. So this is this is for the offer if you have 10,000 in dissipated assets. So the dissipated assets can really drive up the cost of an offer. But if the RCP, if it's just at 5 years, then you take $100 times 60. So that would be the asset value of 10,000 plus 6,000, which is 60. 5 months. 5 years has 60 months, and that gives you $6,000, which is only 16,000. Sorry, I apologize for my horrible drawing skills. I always stunk at art. But 16,000 on a $30,000 or $100,000 debt, they will accept this offer. It will go back to the original offer amount. So the numbers change based on what we're looking at. So if you don't have 10,000 in dissipated assets, then it's these numbers, 2,200 or 3,400 with $1,000 in your bank account. And the IRS has gotten less forgiving. It used to be that they used to ignore what was in someone's bank account as long as it kind of showed at the end of the month there wasn't a lot left over. Again, they've tightened up their rules. They've made it harder all around for pretty much everybody involved. So when we do an offer, we want to get, and we're going to work hard to push and shove. And ideally, we want someone negative about $500. So we're going to argue, get the allowables. If they're negative $100, we'll do the same thing. The IRS is going to shove these numbers around, and so if you have cushion, a negative cushion here of $100, or in this case $500, it's much more likely this number will be zero, and the offer will be just based on the assets. But this is the number one thing that trips up the IRS, trips up people applying for it, and I hate to say it, a lot of tax professionals too. They do not understand this. And when you look at the IRS charts, you look at how they do this, they take it out to the CSED, or when the tax debts are expiring, by the number of months, and then they use that to figure out RCP. It's straight out of the Internal Revenue Manual. That's how they should be doing it. That's how they do it. So if you talk to someone and they don't have to explain the whole thing to you, but if they don't understand RCP, first of all, most of the time you're just talking to a salesperson. You're not talking to the attorney that understands all of this. And not all tax attorneys understand all of this. There's a lot of material here, and this is what I teach to my staff, and this is what we see and talk about regularly whenever we get charts or an offer is rejected. At the moment, we'll get the charts, and that's what you appeal on. So again, it's terminology here when you're negotiating with the IRS. So I'm really close to running out of time. We're going to spend some more time, probably talk about this all Monday as well, because there's so much here. And this is how you make sure your offer gets accepted, is understanding this process. You understand this, you can reasonably, say whether or not an offer is going to be accepted or not. So again, I hope you have a great weekend. Enjoy the beautiful weather out there. And again, we'll talk come Monday morning. We're going to slow it down, walk through this, and explain the numbers and how to do an offer and compromise like a boss. And make sure you get it done correctly. So have a great weekend.